Hello there, friends and enemies. It is the end of the year 2023. I wanted to make a little bit of a video where I talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! In the last year and how I feel about it as a casual player. Maybe also throw in a little bit about how I feel about my content and how I've been doing on YouTube. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. 2023 was, in my opinion, a pretty good year for Yu-Gi-Oh! Even if I didn't personally feel like I was that in tune with a lot of the sets this year, I can recognize that there were a ton of sets that had a lot of good stuff in them, at least from my perspective. I started off the year with the idea that I was going to take like a 6-month break for the first half of the year, just not buy any Yu-Gi-Oh! Products at all, and that got thrown out the window when Amazing Defenders was released. And that's okay, you know? We don't always stick to our plans when we're compulsive about buying stuff. But Amazing Defenders is a good example of how I feel about the rest of the sets that came out this year. A lot of newer archetypes I was super into. I thought they were cool and interesting, but I really wasn't able to build into them, either because they were too expensive or they just weren't substantial enough yet. The one new archetype that I did build a deck out of was my Nimlaria deck. This archetype is one of the archetypes that isn't that substantial, at least it doesn't feel like super well constructed so far, but hopefully going into 2024 we're going to see some Nimlaria support that'll help build it out as an archetype a little bit more. Maybe even not just Nimlaria support, just having level 10 beasts, like more level 10 beast monsters would be pretty cool. This year felt unusually full of Yu-Gi-Oh! Discourse, a lot of which I personally feel like had pretty clear-cut answers to them, but evidently that wasn't shared among a lot of the community. It also made me think about how I act as part of this community and how it affects the way that the rest of the community looks. And, of course, not just me. I'm not saying that I'm big and influential, but I'm saying that us as a community as a whole have a certain way that we treat people, and I got to see that firsthand when I took a step back and reflected on how I acted about certain things this year. More specifically, there was an incident earlier this year where a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh! People dogpiled onto a creator who was complaining about how, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is super long nowadays and people are playing big, long, empty combos or whatever. And I understand the sentiment to not like that and to try and defend that, but I also understand that dogpiling people isn't the best way to go, and it's definitely going to make people not like the community and not want to join, specifically because they see that behavior and they think, oh, you aren't willing to accept criticisms about your game, which I completely understand. There's also been a big discussion this year, as there have for almost every year, I think, about the way that women are treated in Yu-Gi-Oh! And how safe Yu-Gi-Oh! Women feel when they are actually in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Sphere. I was going to make a video on this. I ended up not doing it specifically because I ultimately overall felt like there's nothing that I could add to the conversation to help make it more substantial. I feel like we should not be alienating specifically women in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community. A lot of women don't join because of either the way that they're treated or the way that they hear that other women are treated, and that sucks. And unfortunately, there's no way to stop people from doing that. Like, the only real way is to make the people doing it feel like freaks, but they're always going to harbor a community of people that are like that unless we completely eradicate this weird idea that people have about women. Anyway, highlight of the year of Yu-Gi-Oh! Because there have been a lot of stupid things this year. First highlight actually is the way that Yu-Gi-Oh! Konami, I should say, handled their 25th anniversary set releases. Releasing not only a reprint of the Legendary Collection, but also reprints of the first 6 Yu-Gi-Oh! Sets to ever be released, all for normal set price, was a crazy good idea, and it got a lot of attention, especially from those who were upset at Wizards of the Coast for releasing a $1,000 pack of proxies for the Magic the Gathering 30th anniversary set. It was a really weird situation, but it did solidify to me part of the reason that I enjoy the way that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is made. Because while we do have our problems with Konami short printing and not necessarily reprinting the correct cards in the correct way or even the correct amount of times, like the time span between a card being made and it being reprinted can be insane sometimes. But I think the 25th anniversary sets were a really good way of Konami showing that they are willing to reprint cards, at least in some capacity. And that leads me to my #1 highlight of 2023. The absolute best set this year, and I feel like a lot of people would agree with me, is the Rarity Collection that we got. A collection that a lot of people didn't even think was going to come to the TCG. If you don't know, Rarity Collection was a set that released, I want to say around September, November, that was full of pretty decent staple cards reprints. Cards that were once, you know, $15, $20, $40, $100 are now just available to get for much, much cheaper than that. It's a super cool move, and it allows players access to cards, whether or not they're casual or competitive, just cards to make their deck better, cards to put into their decks to make them a little bit more playable or a little bit more consistent. That was a super good move from Konami, and I so super hope that we get a little bit more of that moving forward. So what are we hoping for 2024? I think 2024 would benefit, and I know this isn't going to happen. This is just going to be me getting up on my soapbox and preaching, but I would enjoy if Konami spent some time, I would say spent an entire year, but even if it's just one set, giving us support for older archetypes, support, even if it's just generic support. It doesn't even have to be archetypal support. Generic support, just in general, for cards, just to make people able to build decks a little more freehand. Part of the reason that I would like this is because I feel like it would encourage more people to deck build a little bit more out of the box, possibly, but I do also feel like it would encourage alternate ways of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Such as draft. If you don't know what draft is, it's where you buy some packs, you open them up, you make a deck with the cards that you get, and then you play with other people. Being able to draft in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think would incentivize stores to buy Yu-Gi-Oh! A little more often, and it would also incentivize players to go and buy packs a little more often, most likely. And I'm not saying this as like, oh, I want Konami to make more money. I'm saying this as I think it would be a good way to get more people into the game that aren't exactly enthused by the game to play it. But I feel like if we prioritized having a few sets just be sets that you could pile together into a deck, if that makes sense. My point being, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a little too archetypal. It relies too much on archetypes and not enough on allowing people to just play cards in any way that they'd like. Not saying you can't play archetypes in a way that you like, but you are kind of limited sometimes. Sometimes there are archetypes that come out, much like Nimalaria, where they don't really have a lot of freestanding stuff to help them be, you know? I'll end my rant there, but I know that a lot of people, at least as far as I've seen, seem to be upset about the fact that Konami is creating support for older archetypes. And I even have seen a couple people say things like, oh, well, who asked for this? And I understand, you play competitively, it's probably not your cup of tea to get melodious support in 2024. But a thing that I think we should all be thinking as Yu-Gi-Oh! Players is that allowing people that want to play those more obscure archetypes to get more cards to possibly make their archetype play a little bit smoother, a little bit better, maybe a little bit even more playably is a good thing. Because if you're just sticking with one deck all the time, or if you're just sticking with making the newest, best deck, you're going to get bored of this game. You should always be able to make a deck that should be able to play without bricking super often and have fun with the game. I have definitely played with archetypes where they brick most of the time if you're building them pure, and some people like building pure archetypes. I'm one of those people. So controversial opinion, but I enjoy when we get support for old archetypes. Other than that, for 2024, I am going to try to be a little less procrastinating about videos. I've been doing this thing lately where I've been waiting until like the last day or the last 2 days before a video is supposed to come out and then filming it, which is what I'm doing right now. It's really hard when you've got a full-time job and you're trying to do something like this. You get emotional fatigue really easy. I don't think that's exactly what I wanted to say, but I'm gonna keep it. Anyway, yeah, I would like to put out videos a little more consistently and a little less procrastinatingly. And hopefully we get to see a little more growth in the channel. We're almost at 600 subscribers, which is insane to me. I couldn't imagine that. I couldn't even imagine hitting 100. 100 is a lot of people. We're almost at 600. That's a crazy amount. If we're able to hit 1,000 this year, I have a giveaway that I have planned that I would like to do. It's not exclusive to Yu-Gi-Oh, but it is a giveaway. So let's see what happens with that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy this entire year. And I hope that moving forward we get a lot more cool stuff for Yu-Gi-Oh! And for other card games. Thank you once again for watching, and until next time, as always, drink your water.